Let's hit it.
And welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori La Bey, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
All right, here we go. What you think about, you will bring about.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome back to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori La Bey, and I hope you enjoyed our opening music. I just love that song. It's called Clarion Call by the Mark Arneson Band. And if you're interested in downloading it, you can do so on any of your favorite music platforms. For those of you that are new to our show, we are about sound information, not just sound bites. Our goal is really to raise all voices, big and small, around the world, from those diagnosed, those that care for them and serve them, advocates, researchers, and more. We have authors and movie directors and singers and songwriters and even children. And today our show is live, so you can call in if you'd like with any questions at 323-870-4602, 323-870-4602. And our topic today is A to Z tips on giving care to somebody who is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Now, before I introduce our guest today, I always like to do a few shout-outs. So first, I want to shout out to Dementia Map. It is growing, and it is so fun to see. For those of you that aren't familiar with Dementia Map, it is a global resource directory that serves those with dementia, their care partners, as well as businesses, organizations, and even our state and national groups as well. And there are 150 different categories there you can search. We are still growing. We just are kind of a pimple on the blimp right now as far as all the resources that are out there. But it's really fun to see people go, oh, my gosh, I had no idea this existed. Oh, my gosh, this is really going to help me. So check it out, and if you have a service product or tool that you would like listed in there, it's very easy to do. Just go to dementiamap.com, or you can always reach out to me, too, at radio@Alzheimer Speaks. There you will find things like the Dementia or the Memory Cafe directory, Coral Health, who is allowing people to download still two of their apps, Music First and Coral Faith, till the end of the year. Also, the Footbar Walker, you will find a calendar of events, and I'm just going to mention one that I'm doing coming up August 10th that is being sponsored by Artist Senior Living, entitled Conscious, Compassionate Care for the Care Partners. And there we're going to kind of explore that underbelly of giving care in a safe and fun environment. And we're going to dare to talk about things that people don't typically like to address, but is so helpful if we're going to live a healthy life. I also want to mention an international conference. It's called Together for Dementia, and that is going to be held on November 2nd, and it's going to be online as well as artist programs, so anybody can attend. The artist one is going to be a free program, and you can find more information about both of these on alzheimerspeaks.com on our homepage. We are going to hear from the Footbar Walker, and then I'm going to introduce you to my co-host and our guest today.
Introducing the life-changing Footbar Walker.
I'm Peggy from Danville, Kentucky, and I'm 91 years old. The Footbar Walker revolutionized my care of George. The saving that I made from having to put him in a nursing home came to about $192,000. The foot bar walker opens and closes just like a standard walker. The only thing that is different is the top bar and the foot bar. Does that ever make a difference?
Does someone you love use a walker? Do they struggle to get up from a seated position? Are you a caregiver dealing with physical pain and stress as you help your patient? The foot bar walker was designed to assist not only the patient, but also the caregiver. Patients have more control standing up, and no lifting from the caregiver is required. See how it works at thefootbarwalker.com. That's thefootbarwalker.com. Peggy, would you recommend the foot bar walker?
Do I ever? I would not be in the health that I'm in today at this age had it not been for the foot bar walker.
Well, thanks, everybody. It's time to hear who we have on the show. But first, I'm going to introduce Kate Lau. Kate is going to be my co-host today. So welcome, Kate. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you, Lori?
I'm doing great. We have missed you. Kate has been dealing with lots of health issues that always hits everybody at one time or another, so we're thrilled to have you back. Kate, can you just give people a little background on what type of dementia you're living with and for how long?
Yes. I live with BVFTD. It is short for Behavior Variant Frontotemporal Dementia. Yes, so my memory is literally intact other than when there's things that I want and I can express what it is because there's so many things there. And I'm pretty focused when I'm speaking one-on-one or two people, but more than that, then I'm thrown. It just does not make sense, or I get anxious even if there's one person that's not understanding me. Then I get very anxious and it got worse, and I just totally am thrown and I don't know what I'm saying. Then it just gets worse. Those are the things that I mainly struggle with. I struggle with writing currently, and I have a lot of fear to write because I just feel like I cannot write like I used to. So I'm actually competing with my old self. Okay, so my experience with dementia is not only as a patient. Mm-hmm. I was a caregiver. At a retirement village for late-stage dementia at skilled nursing. And occasionally I would be at the Alzheimer's unit. I wish they would say dementia unit because not everybody has Alzheimer's. But that's our job to teach them about the different kinds of dementia. I have 4 children and 7 grandchildren. I'm happy. Oh. I've got a lot of, I live with it, but I'm happy. And I read quite a lot. And there's not much to say about me.
Okay. Well, thank you for introducing yourself. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest here today, who is Mark Nutting. And Mark is a retired IT professional who gained dementia caregiving experience by caring for his mother, who lived with Alzheimer's disease for like 13 years. He is the author of a book called The Alzheimer's A to Z Caregiver's Handbook, and he always speaks and writes, pretty much from that caregiver perspective. He strives to really stay current and expand his knowledge on Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and caregiver support through attending classes, lectures, and webinars. So welcome, Mark. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me, Lori.
Well, I'm excited to have you with us, and I want to thank you for sending me your book as well. It's always nice to be able to have that in hand when we're doing these interviews. If you wouldn't mind first telling people of a little bit more expansive experience with dementia within your own family. Was it just your mom, or was it others, and did you have personal friends that were touched by this as well?
It was just my mom within my family. And so when it entered my family through my mom, I was totally oblivious to it. It was a brand new issue for me, a brand new situation. And I was able, fortunately, to have her diagnosed very, very early. I saw some signs early on that were more than the normal aging forgetfulness, and I had her diagnosed very early on. And then it was, you just kind of hit the ground running, and you play by play, you figure things out as you go along. And so I had a 13-year run with her. She was able to stay in her own home, which was her choice and her wish to stay in her own home as long as she could. She lived independently. And so I was able to keep her in her own home through adding different accommodations and putting different processes in place as she was able to do less and less in order to bridge that gap. And so she stayed in her own home for about 4 years after the initial diagnosis. And then for safety purposes, from wandering out at night, she had to be transitioned to a skilled nursing facility. I was also, after the initial emergency entry into a skilled nursing facility, which was not one that was specific to Alzheimer's or dementia, but kept her safe. Within a month, I was able to scope out all the area dementia units, choose the one I wanted, and I was so fortunate that they had an opening quickly, because those openings are very cyclical and you can wait months. But within a month, I got her into the dementia unit of my choice. And so she went on another 9 years there for a full 13-year stretch we had with the Alzheimer's disease. And my mother was very healthy otherwise. So unlike many people who will pass away from something else, something completely unrelated to Alzheimer's, during the course of the Alzheimer's disease, my mother did not. So she actually went the full scope of the disease and ended up, dying in the end from symptoms from Alzheimer's disease, from the results of the Alzheimer's. And so it was a full run with the disease, from caring from her in her home. I was never a live-in caregiver, but of course that presented problems in and of itself, being out of the house but going continually for visits to the house to get things in place, to do things with her, and then to handle things from work remotely while I was out during the days. And that presented its own set of problems and issues.
Sure.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I finish. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, no. So once she could no longer be in her home, then the caregiving transitioned to overseeing the care in the nursing home. And I think what a lot of people don't understand, even some caregivers, once your loved one goes into a facility, if that's the course of action that takes for your family, your caregiving doesn't necessarily end, or certainly doesn't have to end. In fact, if anything, mine stepped up more, because now I had to maintain her. I felt I had to maintain her care and her care plan within the facility. I had to make sure she was getting the best care possible within that facility. So it was working hand in hand with management, with the program director, with the social worker on a continual daily basis to make sure all her needs were being met, that they were happy with things, that I was happy with things, and more importantly, that my mom was content and comfortable at all times. And so the caregiving didn't end. It just took a different feel and a different vision in order to carry it out. And even still, even while she was in the nursing home, on a personal level, there were still accommodations and things that I was putting in place myself, even above and beyond what they were putting into place. So the caregiving doesn't always end or doesn't have to end once your loved one is in a facility. And in my case, it did not. Again, if anything, it stepped up. And so we went 9 years in the nursing facility. And again, as bad as and horrific as the disease is, there were some good positive aspects, and one of them was that one of my wishes was that she wouldn't be alone when she passed away. And I was able to be with her. You can't always do that. Even if you're with them and you could just step out to use a restroom, you just never know. But I was with her at the moment she passed away. She was holding my hand, so she knew she wasn't alone, and she knew I was there. And so that was probably the best ending to that run that we could have had. So.
Wonderful. Well, and I think that was an excellent point that, you know, caregiving doesn't end just because someone's placed, or it sure as heck doesn't have to. Though I'm sure people in communities see that, where someone does just kind of walk away and drop them off. And part of that is the stigma that they don't know who I am anymore. So what's the point? I'm just going to pull Kate in quick, because I know she mentioned that she had worked in a community. Kate, what was your experience? Did you see families walk away, or were families pretty involved when they had to place a loved one?
You know, it's the reality doesn't hit at once when you see them leave, you know, because I think the person with Alzheimer will be like disoriented. She's all, you know, look around and actually very clueless, and you can't read her because she's new. But my feeling as a caregiver, my heart just breaks, because you think that your son or your daughter is just going out and will be right back, and you don't know where you're at. And that's why so many of them, as they progress in the disease, they always say that I want to go home, I want to go home, I want to go home. But this is their home, and you can't explain that this is their home. Now, a good caregiver would say, well, you know, your son or your daughter will come over. This is your home, but they will visit often. I think that is sufficient. Instead of saying that, okay, turn the wheelchair around, push the patient down another wing of the care facility, and said, okay, this is your way home. Now, that really, really kills me, because I don't know what's in their head. Do they expect to see their things when you do that? It's just very, very difficult. And the worst part for me is when I leave after my shift, about 7 o'clock. Some of the patients know a lot of them, I was skilled. They were too ill. They were at end stage. But those that were just transferred, they knew my name, and they would say, Kate, Kate, Kate. And so some of the nurses or nurses' aides would just kind of shield me from them seeing me, and say that she needs to go home sometime. Like, she needs to eat. Do you understand? I said, don't say that, you know. I'll just give him a hug and said, hey, I'll be back tomorrow. That's That's my take of it. So, Mark, how do you feel when the first time you drop off your mom as a caregiver? How do you feel?
Well, when I first brought my mom to the dementia unit, again, she had been in the first skilled nursing facility on an emergency basis, so there was really no preparation time for that. But in transferring her to the dementia unit of my choice, I had gone there ahead of time. I had taken her most prized things from her walls in her living room in her home, and I had adorned the walls in her bedroom at the dementia unit with those things. So when she would arrive, she would have all her personal things there. Her wall hangings from her home were in her room, and many of those, she was quite artistic. Many of those were things she had drawn or painted herself, so it was all very familiar to her. So I did my best to prepare the room for her, so when she got to the environment, instead of being something new and different, it was going to be something different but familiar, unlike the first nursing home she went in, which was just all institutional looking and not very homey. So that's how I prepared it for her. And I also, her sister my Aunt Ellie was very close with us and helping and in communicating with my mom. And so I asked her to be at the nursing home as well. So when my mom arrived, we were both standing there waiting for her. So we were there to welcome her in rather than just arriving in a nursing home with total strangers. And my aunt stayed a few minutes, and then I stayed several hours, as I always did. And I stayed through lunch for the first day. And so she was quite at ease and quite happy. When we walked into her room, She didn't want to actually change facilities, so I had a bit of a bump there, which often you do. And that's because as much as the first facility was absolutely not appropriate for someone with dementia, the staff was wonderful to her, and she had become accustomed to it, so she didn't want to leave. And so when we got to the new facility and she saw her room, the first thing she said was, "Here's all my stuff. I wondered where it was." And it just gave my heart such joy to know that, you know, all that effort I had put in had worked. It had given her some peace. And then when we went to the dining room, they had a small dining room for the more highly functional residents at that point, and so that they could communicate better with each other over meals. And they had her place all set with a nice, pretty name tag with her name on it at her place. And so when we walked in and the unit director, you know, introduced us to the room and showed her place, she sat down and she looked at me and she said, "I know you said this place was going to be nicer, but I didn't know it was going to be this beautiful." And I knew at that moment she was happy to have had the change, and she had forgiven me for moving her, because as I said, there was a little bit of a bump in the road there. She was not happy with me at first, but that was my approach and my way of handling that, was to make it as familiar and homey to her as possible when she arrived.
Wonderful.
How wonderful are you? I mean, I've never seen that ever happen. Mostly they would take the resident, and the family would show the resident the room, and of course, most of mine were skilled or already in when I joined the disposal, were already staying there. But so often families only come on like Sundays because they're working, not after work, except for two sisters who always come after work and decorated their mother's room for every occasion, Valentine's, Christmas, and so on and so forth. But, they did not expect their mom to stay there for so many years. And they were telling me that, we could have bought her a ranch house with a ramp and a beautiful for what we're paying. But I think what you did was so wonderful, so welcoming for her. And I think the reason why she was not wanting to leave the first place was she was just making friends, and she didn't want to leave her friends. And now this place is just so, like bright, and oh wow, she quickly forgot the old place. Well, thank you very much for doing that. Pardon me?
She did, yes. She quickly let go of the old place and was very, very happy and content to be in the new place.
Yes.
That's wonderful. I think it's, I think there's a problem, though, because sometimes in some communities, not all, and I think it's gotten better over the years, but a lot of people, you weren't allowed to bring stuff in. They had their furniture, and, everything was part of the community, where now people can bring more items in. They can hang more things on the wall. But, years ago, that wasn't always the case with things, or you had just kind of a little memory box by the door, and that was about it. So, I think it's good to have that comfort and that peace, to be able to have your own things and stuff around you. Mark, I really want to talk about your book, the A to Z Alzheimer's handbook. What made you decide to write the book? And also, I always like to ask, why did you pick the title? Because I always find that fascinating as well.
Well, ironically, I never had a goal in life to write a book of any kind, certainly not on Alzheimer's disease. It just wasn't something that was ever on my bucket list. But, of course, the years of experience with my mom, and during our time at the nursing home facility and the dementia unit, as I said, we were there for 9 years. And so other family members of other residents would often approach me because they knew I'd been in that role for so long. And they would have often approached me with issues they were having, either with their loved one or with the facility. And they would ask my advice and my opinions and how I would handle that. And very oftentimes I had handled that myself with my mom because, again, we'd been there so long. And so after a while, I thought, I could probably help a lot more people if I could take these same anecdotes and advice that I'm sharing with these people in person and put it in a little handbook. And so that was the initial spark of an idea of wanting to possibly write one, was to help other people in the same way. The title came from, I decided when I was going to write it that, and I wrote it after the fact. I waited till after my mom passed away to finish it. I had actually started it during the time she was in the facility, but I really got about 12 topic ideas down on a little outline, and that became the basis of the topic guide eventually. And then I left it. It wasn't the time. A couple years after she passed away, I picked it back up. And so having gone the full scope of the disease from pre-diagnosis to actually dying from the effects of Alzheimer's, and then I addressed even grieving afterwards, it kind of gave me the A to Z theme of from the beginning to the end, from pre-diagnosis to death and beyond. And so that kind of gave me the theme for the book.
Okay. And as far as target audience, is it just for people dealing with Alzheimer's, or do you think there's overlap to other dementias and just other, other issues of caring for people in having different needs?
I think, because dementia is a more generic term, I think it can benefit people with different dementias who are having some of these same issues and solutions, although, again, I don't have a medical background, so this book isn't written from a clinical standpoint, but from a personal experience of a caregiver. So my personal experience that I'm writing from was with my mom, who had dementia from Alzheimer's disease. So it may be a little more aimed at that. The other thing it may be more aimed at, as I mentioned earlier, there are different types of caregivers. Now, I was never a 24/7 live-in caregiver. I was always an out-of-the-house caregiver when she lived at home. And so I was always back and forth with visits to put things in place and to make sure she was okay and to do things with her. And then I was often handling things over the phone with utility companies or doctors or whomever from work 50 miles away. And so while many of the issues and solutions I discuss and talk about in the book will cross over from one type of caregiver to another because you're still dealing with the same dementia and Alzheimer's disease, but probably it would be a little more pointed towards somebody who was doing that out-of-the-house caregiving, because some of the issues I had were unique to being that type of caregiver, and a live-in caregiver would have some issues that were unique to them that I didn't address because I didn't live those.
Sure. Well, and I'm glad you brought up the different types of caregivers because, in caregiver, care partner, care companion, those are all interchangeable words out there. But there is the 24/7, the person who actually lives with them. There are people who, visit on a daily basis. There are some that just have a set routine. Some families kind of have a tag team where, today's your day, Wednesday's my day, whatever. And then you have others that break it down by duty. So this person's in charge of the finances. This person is in charge of medical. Another one does errands. Another one does meals. Another one is just specific to medication, not even related to all the medical appointments. That's just their deal. Others are self-care and entertainment. So there's a lot of different ways you can break this down to accomplish the goal. If you're a single person handling this, of course, that's going to be different. But if you have family and friends you can tap into or the finances to hire out, there's lots of different ways. So I do appreciate you bringing that up. What is your hope for the book? Is there a primary theme that you hope the readers walk away with?
I mean, my hope for the book originally and still is just that it can possibly help people, that something good can come out of, this horrific experience of watching my mother struggle with this disease for 13 years before she passed away from it. So obviously the goal of the book was to help people, but I think as far as a theme, it would probably be the same as my basic philosophy. I hope that theme is carried through the book, which would be when caring for someone with dementia, my basic philosophy was always to strive to have the person living with dementia, which was my mom, attain the best quality of life they're capable of achieving at every point along the progression of the disease. And, of course, that quality of life ability is going to change as the disease progresses. But it means shifting our focus back and forth. At one point, we're going to have to have our focus on the things they can no longer do for themselves. And we need to do that so we can put accommodations in place to bridge that gap, particularly when they're living independently still. They have a basic set of needs. The medical profession would call them ADLs, or activities of daily living. But there are certain things they have to do to be safe and to survive on a day-to-day basis. And as they have shortcomings to do that, we have to focus on what they can't do for themselves and what we can put into place to bridge that gap. But what some people don't realize, once we do that, we then need to shift our focus on the things that they can still do. And this continues and I continue this right through till the very end with my mom. So even as the dementia has increased greatly, I had to also shift back and forth so I could then focus on what she could still do, and more importantly, what she could still enjoy doing, because that's what's going to add to the quality of life. And of course, this isn't something you do once, assess things and put things in place. It's an ongoing, continual process of assessing what they can't do for themselves so you can bridge that gap, and then what they can still do and enjoy so that they can enjoy it. And when it's something that they're doing for pure enjoyment, that's all well and good. It adds to their quality of life. But also when it's something that they're still doing for themselves, that they're allowed, that they're able to do, but maybe takes a little longer or a little bit of accommodation, they're also going to get that sense of self-worth as when they're allowed to do things as much as they can for themselves, when they're allowed to continue to do that. I like to think of the two. I like to think of the focus on things they can't do for themselves any longer as addressing their safety and physical well-being, and then focusing on what they can still do and enjoy as addressing their emotional well-being and their overall happiness.
Well, and you have a quote in the book from Mother Teresa, I think, that hits that point, and it says, it's not how much you do, but how much love you put into the doing. And, you know, I found myself in that trap where I thought I was supposed to do, and I thought I was supposed to keep her busy all the time. And then I realized I was kind of losing my relationship with her, and it really wasn't about her comfort level and so forth. I thought I was, because I was doing all these things, but then I slowed down, and it was like, oh, holy cow, this needs to be really, really different than what I thought. And I found that I was getting satisfaction by checking things off my list because I felt so bad that there wasn't a cure. Now, in your book, you know, I just want to break down, you have different topics like early warning signs and the early years with the disease, when they can't live at home any longer, interacting with your loved one as the disease progresses, eating and food changes, medical and legal issues, even interacting with a community, which I think is really important. And then, you know, how the end comes. So what do you do in those last days and that grieving process? So you really do kind of take people from beginning to end. And this is a you know, it's a small book. You've really compacted things well in here. You know, it's under 100 pages, and the way you've written it too, I think it's easy for people to reference, you know, what area they need to dive into as far as breaking things down. So I think that is great. I'm wondering, you know, besides the book, what other things are you involved in, or am I being presumptuous to think that you are involved in other things besides just the book?
No, indeed I am. My effort after my mom passed and as I was healing from the grieving process, and I just started to feel that tug and that pull that it was time to give back. I mean, I did give back continually by helping other family members and other residents while my mom was alive, but But once she was gone, I felt like somehow this wasn't done, which I thought it would be, while she was living. Once it was over, it would be over. And I thought, this just isn't done. It just didn't feel right. I thought some more good had to come out of this, and I felt I had something to give back after the 13 years of experience. And so I wanted to do that, and the book was just one way to help other caregivers, but not the only way. So in addition, I also work with caregiver support groups, and I also present education and information sessions about Alzheimer's and dementia to the public, both to give a general education, but also to help educate people who are living in the community, because in our communities we have people living with early dementia that are still functioning in the communities, and we encounter them all the time. And so it helps to raise people's awareness to how to interact with these people in our community as well. So those are some of the things I've been doing to help caregivers and just the cause in general. Because of the pandemic, I started a lot of this work in the past year virtually online, much of it through Zoom. And just now, as our country is starting to open up more and more, I'm setting the stage to start doing some of these things with in-person groups locally, which I'm very excited and looking forward to working with people in person again. Although I think the pandemic, will leave us with some benefits, and one of them will be that I think some of these virtual caregiver support groups will continue on, because there's still going to be a need for people who that works better for than an in-person group.
I think a lot of people have noticed that they're having a bigger reach, a broader reach from people who weren't able to leave the house. But then there are a lot of people that don't care for the online, and so now, through the pandemic, then they weren't being served. And so it is a hard balance. But I do think we need a hybrid out there, and I just want to pull Kate in to kind of get her thoughts on that. Kate, what are your thoughts in what you're seeing with people living with dementia, the in-person versus online, or combination of both? What do you think will meet the needs the best?
You mean to reach out to them, is that correct?
Yep, correct.
Some of my dementia residents, they lost their sight in skilled nursing, and that might not have anything to do with the dementia. But I don't think audio is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what they understand or what they're not. When you say looking, what do you mean by that? Do you mean that watching him on TV, or one-on-one coming to visit, or? I don't quite understand.
Oh, in terms of what do you think people prefer who are living with dementia, in person or online? And same with care partners as well.
Yeah, in person definitely, because they need not only the one-on-one, they lack touch. They lack being touched, being hugged, being, able to interact with someone, that there's still a person in there who just wants another person. You know what I mean? It's just like staying alone, or staying alone with a group of people, but then it is not personal enough. They're just people. And no dementia patients I've seen, well, maybe a few, would hug each other once in a while, and because they just feel like it. You never know what they want to do. But definitely, a visit from family and friends would be great. And before I forget, Mark, I've been looking for a good dementia book. And it's been a long time since I read a new dementia book. I read quite a lot. I think it's an escape thing lately on my Kindle. However, your book is A to Z Alzheimer's. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you have a workbook that comes with it?
I do not know. It is one book, And it's a very small, concise book. One of my issues when I was starting caregiving was I found books were very large, hundreds of pages, and I just didn't have the time or the head to go through hundreds of pages looking for something. So, as Laurie stated, I did write the book. It was deliberately by design a small, concise book, and it would seem an opposing goal, but it was also to cover the full scope of pre-diagnosis to death and grieving. And so because those seem contradicting issues, obviously the compromise was to write about the full scope and to write something small, something short and sweet about each one. And I did arrange a topic guide that while somebody could make a short, easy read of the book cover to cover, that also either without having read it first or having read it through once could then refer to that topic guide to hone in on something specific that they're having a problem with right now, and they want to look at that issue. So I tried to kind of cover all those bases. So it is I feel a good book for somebody to get a good overview of all the different parts and issues that they may encounter, because obviously no case is textbook. Everybody is slightly different.
Yes.
With a little bit of something on and everything. It's by no means meant to be an exhaustive writing on the disease.
Yeah, I might have misunderstood. I thought it comes with a workbook, and I'm excited to read your books. I'll go to Amazon, and yes, I've been reading books, and I never ever know myself to not finish a book before I start another one. There was a time when I had 5 books going and just pick up this and this and this. However, this is exactly what I need. And, people with early onset dementia, unfortunately, we have more and more of those. I am sure they're going to love this book. And caregivers at nursing facilities, caregivers at home, like Lori for 30 years. I don't know what she read. Maybe with a lot of scientific terms, like people like with dementia cannot understand. There's lots and lots of people. I'm with several support groups online. I'm admin for a couple of them. And questions, amongst themselves, of course, and do you know of a good book? Because this book's so hard, I don't get it. This is what they need for caregivers and for people with early onset or middle stages dementia, where they can still read. And I congratulate you for writing this book. At first, I thought there was a workbook. I went, I need a workbook. Yes, I can read this book and also learn something by, filling out a workbook. Okay, good. It's good that you have this book, and I can't wait to get it.
Well, I hope you enjoy it.
I know I will, from just what you've described it.
Yeah, the title is A to Z Alzheimer's Caregiver's Handbook, so that might have been the confusion on the workbook. But Kate, I will send you the book that Mark sent me. So I just have to confirm your address and stuff, but we'll do that offline, and then I'll send that to you so you can see that.
That would be great. Thank you, Laurie.
Yeah, I got to pass them along. I get a lot of books, and so I'm always bringing them to my support groups and passing them out when I do speaking and things like that, because they don't do any. They don't do any good in my closet, So I love being able to get them out to people who can use them.
Mark, I do the same with my book. I actually give away far more copies than I sell, and every time I give one away, I say, when you're through reading it and you're done with it, please pass it on. When you encounter someone who's starting their caregiver journey, please pass it on, and hopefully it'll help another person.
Exactly. That is so important. And I think even, if people are listening today, if you pick up a nugget, pass it along. Don't keep it to yourself. We can't keep all of these tips and tools a secret. We need to get the word out for everyone to be able to access information. And I think sometimes we forget, to do that in the importance of that. Mark, what message would you send to those who are currently caregivers, for a loved one? Is there something you'd like to say to them that you feel they might need to know?
Well, I think probably two things, Laurie. First of which, one of the topics in my book, which is a very short topic, but it's called memory versus enjoyment, and it's something that you talked about a little bit. You mentioned early on that sometimes caregivers will just, drop somebody off at a facility or a community and think, well, they're not going to remember me or know me, so why go? They're not going to remember what I do. They're not going to remember where I've taken them, so why do it? And I learned very early on through my mother's trek with this disease that whether or not they remember is totally different from whether or not they enjoy it. And so, she didn't remember some of the things I did for her. Sometimes she would give other people credit for the things I did. And oftentimes, early on when she was highly functional, I would take her out once or twice a week. We would go to lunch. We would, go feed the ducks. We would go to the zoo. We would do whatever we could while I was still able to do those things with her. And I knew when I brought her back, an hour later she might not remember it. But the important thing was she enjoyed it in the moment. And the other thing I learned was the memory goes quickly, but the emotions don't. So not only did she enjoy it in the moment, but the added benefit was everything you do with your loved one, if they had a good time, if they're enjoying it, if they felt safe and content and loved and happy, once you leave them, those feelings are going to remain the rest of the day. They may not connect the memory with those feelings, but they're going to be left in that uplifted mood, the same as we all are when we do things like that. And so the first thing I would leave caregivers with is not to focus on what are they going to remember, but how much are they going to enjoy this in the moment, and then those feelings would last. And I think the last thing I would leave caregivers with is not to be so hard on themselves. Most caregivers really go the extra mile from, my own experience with myself and with caregivers I deal with in support groups. They go the extra mile. They're out straight. They're doing the best they can to make their loved one's life as good as possible. And yet these same caregivers who go the extra mile are almost always beating themselves up over something. And oftentimes it's simply nothing that's their fault. That one situation that happened, and they think, well, that didn't end up exactly the way I wanted it to. What was the perfect thing I could have done, or how could I have done that differently? Well, sadly, the truth of the matter is, with most things in life, and certainly dementia prime in that, there's not always a perfect solution. I mean, sometimes there is not a perfect solution to a situation to calm somebody down or to bring peace to a situation. Sometimes you just have to ride that out. And so I guess my final thought to caregivers would be, you're doing your best, accept that you're doing your best, and that your best is the best you can do. So let the guilt go and stop beating yourself up. And that doesn't mean that in hindsight I don't have things I look back at and wish could have been done differently. Would I have loved to have been in a financial situation where I could have bought a different house with all the accommodations Mom needed, that I could have afforded 24/7 care when she was at that stage and kept her at home? Absolutely, I wish that then, and I wish that now. But there's no guilt about it, because I know within my means I did the best I could for her. So I can honestly say I don't have any guilt, and I think that's what I would want to impress on other caregivers, that if you're doing your best, accept that that's the best you can do, and don't beat yourself up over things that you can't do.
Good advice. Good advice. Kate, I want to get your thoughts on that remembering versus enjoying, because I thought that was just a really powerful statement in terms of caring for someone with dementia. What are your thoughts on that? Those are two different things, remembering and enjoying a moment.
Was that for Mark or for me?
Oh, for you, Kate. I'm sorry.
Oh, for me. I was just thinking, wow, what a good title that is. And I would like to get this book and then also pass it on Also pass it on to people who care for me and who care for themselves. You know, there's a difference. Yes, there's a professor that I took care of, and he always seems to ask everybody to ask my permission if they were going to take him out somewhere. I said, well, sure. I'm not the only, person that takes care of me, but if that makes him happy. And this is it. He'll come back, and I'll talk to him, and how was your dinner? And then he said, oh, it was great, and there's a big smile on his face. That means he had a good time. He was enjoying himself. And I asked him, so what did you eat, Mr. Sims? And then he said, soup. And then I said, okay, do you remember what soup it was? He says, no. So, these are the kind of things that I encounter very often. So it seems like he had short-term memory loss, long-term memory loss. But when he came back, he was joyous. And he couldn't wait to tell me things, and some of the things don't come out right. And that's okay. So I knew that he enjoyed himself. Do you know what I mean? He enjoyed himself. It followed him right to the end of the day, and he was in a good mood.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, but he forgot what he was eating, so that doesn't matter. He enjoyed himself.
Mhm. Yeah, I just think that was such a powerful statement, Mark, that you made. When you talk to people about that, I'm just interested in, does their jaw kind of drop and go, oh my gosh, I never looked at it like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a light bulb moment for a lot of people, because it is easy to, fall into that trap of, well, you're not going to remember, so why bother? Particularly as things get along. As I said, when Mom was highly functional, I would just, pick her up and we'd go out to lunch, we'd do things. But then as the disease progressed, it became more and more difficult, to where I needed a walker, and then I needed a wheelchair, and then I needed to hire a private CNA when she needed help in the restrooms. And then, of course, at the very end, when she was wheelchair-bound, then I had to hire a lift van in order to get her to my aunt's once a month. Then we were down to once a month for lunch, but just to get her out for that change of scenery. And the logistics, were just draining. And there were times where I thought, geez, is this worth it? And she doesn't remember an hour later going through all this. But it was like, no, because I knew she enjoyed it so much in the moment, it was absolutely worth it. So if you haven't lived it, it can be a light bulb moment if you haven't discovered that on yourself yet.
Yeah. Well, and even, you mentioned about, getting a car for transportation. I remember how frustrating that was, because they're like, well, when do you want us back? And I'm like, I have no idea how long she's going to last, if it's going to be a half an hour or a full day, And so trying to get people to understand that was interesting as well, or because you hate to, if they're really engaged, you hate to cut it off. When people are really enjoying themselves. And so there's a lot of different learning curves in this whole process. That's for sure. Well, I so appreciate you spending time with us today on this. I can't believe our hour is just speeding away. We've got about 7 minutes left. Kate, anything that you want to add on that you think listeners should know when it comes to giving care?
Mark, thank you for writing the books, and definitely the one that you mentioned, something on engagement. What is the title? Memory versus engagement. I'm going to learn so much from it, and I've already learned. I keep quiet quite a bit this time because I'm listening and I'm learning. These are things that even I don't think about, And now my caregiver, curious. I want to read this book so I know what they're doing. They're going over and above, what they're supposed to do. So thank you, Mark, for being here for us. And I will pass this on.
Oh, you're so welcome, and thank you for joining the call. It was a pleasure meeting you.
You too?
Yeah. Now, we need to make sure that listeners know how to get a hold of you, Mark. So I just want to go over that, because that would be way too sad if we didn't get that information out to people.
Yes.
So your website is bookmark.marks, and that's plural, universe.com, bookmark.marksuniverse.com. And then your email is bookmark@marksuniverse.com. You are also on LinkedIn, so if you look up Mark A. Nutting, you will find him there. The book is also listed on Amazon, so if you put Mark Nutting in, it will come up. Any other contact information you want people to have, Mark?
No, I think that would be it, because even if they just get to my primary website, again, which is bookmark@marksuniverse.com, on there is a link from my email, which is the bookmark@marksuniverse.com. There's a LinkedIn link. There's, the bio and author page. There's pictures of my mom and me during the journey. So pretty much anything they might want to ask or get in touch with me with would be from that book's homepage there.
Okay.
I also have a link that I just added recently for resources and events when I am doing an information session or those types of things. I now post them on there as well.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. And I want to thank you for being part of Dementia Map, too. People can find
thank you so much for. Yeah, I was happy that you provided that. Definitely a needed service.
Yeah. No, we want as many services, products, and tools and information listed on there for people, because we all learn different. We need different things at different times, and every family, has their own priorities and family dynamics. So there can never be too much information out there. Excuse me. And then if people want to reach out to Kate, Kate is on Facebook, and you can connect with her there at, is it Kate Lau Booth that you're under,
no.
Kate, on Facebook?
It's Kate with a C, Kate _A_ Lau, L-A-U, that's my last name, at yahoo.com.
Okay, and then on Facebook it's Kate, C-A-T-E, and then Lau, L-A-U -Booth. And for myself, you can always reach out to me at radio@alzheimerspeaks.com. Maybe you can be our next guest. We're always looking for people to interview, and our main website is alzheimerspeaks.com, and hopefully in a couple of months we'll be launching our new site, which I can't wait to do. So look for that. It's going to be much easier to maneuver through. In the meantime, have a wonderful, wonderful week. And let's see, Thursday, we are going to be talking about utilizing music as self-care. So that's going to be a really good show as well. And that will also be a live show. So if you want to call in for that, you surely can. I know a lot of people with podcasts listen afterwards, but when we're live, you are always welcome. Again, we are here to raise all voices and just make the world a better place when it comes to dementia. So thanks so much, everybody. We will talk to you next week. Mark and Kate, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Bye now.
Thank you, Laurie, so much for having me.
Hi, everyone. This is Meredith from the Senior Fitness with Meredith podcast, where I discuss all things for seniors, from fitness, your health and wellness journeys, how to be all over strong and beyond. I also have my mini podcast called Motivation with Meredith. It's a great, quick motivational pick-me-up for your days. Join me, listen now, search for Senior Fitness with Meredith on your favorite podcast platform.